Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which of course saw Thanksgiving Black Friday numbers coming in last week as well. So we'll talk about just not only the 3-day but the 5-day totals for some of the new premieres, including a premiere from Disney in Encanto, which is very disappointing to say the very least. It barely beat Ghostbusters Afterlife in its second week of release. That is definitely something for not only Disney to be concerned about, but for Sony Pictures to be pretty excited about as far as the long-term prospects for a film like Ghostbusters Afterlife. Before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button. If you're watching over in Odyssey, smash the rumble button. If you're watching over there, really does help and mean a lot. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel with the bell notification on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So my voice is almost back to normal. So thank you again, everyone, for your prayers and your kind words and understanding having to cancel various streams and other things like that. But obviously, I do want to try and take it as easy as I possibly can, as the voice is still in recovery at this point. Should be okay to go for tomorrow night's One Man Low Council stream, but I will keep you all posted if for any reason after teaching school, that is something that I can't do for any reason. But let's go ahead and dive into the numbers here. So Encanto coming in opening weekend with $27 million. So that's not including what it had already made during the week. It made $40.3 million since it had an opening on Wednesday because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So this film, not a very strong start. Remember that Disney, putting out any film, is always going to have at least $100 to $150 million starting price tag for its releases, meaning that these films have to make somewhere between $300 and $500 million worldwide in order for any of them to break even. Disney has had a lot of issues this year having any films to make that load of money, or at least the very least to be able to get to their break-even points. And it looks like we're going to have a very similar situation here with Encanto, which is a pretty amazing feat, seeing that this is an animated film, and typically these are the bread and butter of Disney films. Usually these are the movies that are able to bring out a lot of money simply because, I know, as my dogs River and Willow are deciding to fight right now, which is exactly what they always like to do, but this is something where typically Disney is very, very strong. Right, they're usually able to put out various releases throughout the year to get to all the various different age demographics, including that of families. And it looks like families decided to go see Ghostbusters Afterlife instead, or at the very least to not want to go out and see Encanto instead. Either way, not looking very good. Whereas Ghostbusters Afterlife saw a 44% drop. So this is the second weekend, 3-day weekend of its second week of release, meaning that even after having a lot of people go to see it, I know I'm excited about it too, River. You're absolutely right, River and Willow. Are you seriously going to do this right now? You want to calm down? You want to calm down right now? But even though this is something where this is again already after a Thanksgiving holiday number, it still had a very small drop-off of only 44% in its second week. If it continues to have these kinds of drop-offs in its domestic release, what it means is that this is going to have a very strong domestic run and also will lead to it not only breaking even, but also get to the point of profitability as well. All the while, House of Gucci is yet another film coming from Ridley Scott with a pretty high price tag as far as its overall budget is concerned, that will likely end up being a financial loss and a financial failure. This already after The Last Duel coming out from Ridley Scott this year saw north of $100 million in its financial loss. Eternals came in at number 4 this week with a 28% drop. This is a film that, again, also another Disney product that is set to lose money because it is just not making money anywhere at this point. And then Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, the film that everyone was asking for, no, obviously not, made only $5.2 million in its opening weekend, making a total of $8.8 million over the entire Thanksgiving frame. A film that it did have a relatively lower budget compared to some of the other films on this list, but is not in a good position. We'll see what its week 2 drop-off is like in order to really fully break down exactly whether this film will be a flop or not. So diving into the full breakdown of the domestic and international numbers, Encanto came in at a very weak $69.6 million. So once again, as a massive Disney project, a massive Disney animated feature, to come in at just under $70 million internationally in its opening weekend with a Thanksgiving holiday added onto it is pretty abysmal. Don't forget how much they were overselling the performance of Shang-Chi, which over Labor Day weekend, which everyone said, oh, Labor Day weekend, no one's going to go see it because Labor Day weekend is notoriously bad for movie releases, even though when you look to the history of it, you realize that that's only because theaters and rather studios don't put out movies during that time frame. So of course the numbers are going to be low for that weekend, because if studios are not going to put movies out during that time because there's this perception that people don't go, then yeah, it's going to basically feed into that dynamic. All the while, Thanksgiving is known to have a massive, boost in ticket sales, especially among families. And yet that did not happen here for Encanto, which made 40.3 domestically and 29.3 in its entire opening frame. So not a very strong start for this film. And obviously, after that week 2 drop, we'll have a better idea of whether the film will be a success or not. But right now, it is not looking good for this movie, and something tells me that I'll be able to project that this film will be a financial flop at the end of next weekend based on these initial numbers. Ghostbusters, though, on the other hand, having $115.7 million internationally at this point in time, is at the point where it could still theoretically lose some money. It is definitely not out of the woods yet, but it is in a much stronger position than it was after its opening weekend, which already it was outperforming what many of the projections were saying. It's still, of course, not doing that much internationally, which was to be expected, but domestically is holding pretty strong. This is a film that likely will be able to break the $100 million mark probably by the end of next weekend, and that will be a feat in and of itself. And basically, the strongest point and the strongest indication is that this film, if it continues to have the kinds of drops that it's had so far, will end up having a pretty, a decent amount of gain, and not just to break even, but also profit, to say the very least. It is at the very least doing better, financially speaking, of where Ghostbusters 2016 was, because that film cost twice the amount of money to actually make. House of Gucci, $34.7 million in its opening, film that, again, doesn't really seem to be doing a whole lot. Another Ridley Scott film that seems to be another massive flop waiting to happen. It might get some Oscar buzz and everything, but in the end, when it comes to the box office, Oscars don't mean a whole lot. Eternals, $368.4 million worldwide. It's a film that needs to make around $500 million to break even. So I guess you could see it's slowing down a lot, not just domestically, but also internationally as well, which was its only possible saving grace. And that seems to be going away with a bunch of new releases out. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City made $13.9 million, which again is, I think, impressive just for the fact that this film had almost no buzz around it, but definitely sad when you compare this to any other film in the Resident Evil franchise. King Richard, an HBO Max day and date release about Venus and Serena Williams, which again, I just question why this was released now when both of them are still active in some form or fashion in their careers. I don't know. It just seems kind of self-serving in a lot of ways. Makes me kind of question whether or not how much money that they were kind of getting for the use of their likeness in any way. Because again, this just doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, it's an Oscar bait type movie, but in the end, I'm not surprised that people are like, yeah, you know what? I don't really think I want to see this, or at the very least would rather watch it on HBO Max instead. Dune, again, as I've mentioned previously, people still for some reason haven't quite gotten the note yet, has slowed down so much, and people are still saying, yeah, but just you wait. That number from Australia and New Zealand, it's gonna be huge. I'm not seeing it yet. It's not really seemed to be much of a thing. It needs to make $412.5 million to get to the break-even point. So yes, it's been greedy for a sequel. I would just say take that as a win and realize that this is not going to be a financial success, at least when you just look at the raw box office numbers. You can break down this in a lot of different ways to spin it as a success. And again, you can do that. But as far as the raw box office is concerned, as far as how much was put into the film and how much was gotten back from the film, at this point, based on the numbers that we have available to us, it just is not there. So just let that go. No Time to Die, though, on the other hand, interestingly enough, has had an extra life internationally, like an insane life internationally. It's crossed $600 million internationally. I don't know what they're putting in the water overseas that are making people want to go see this bloated film, but hey, something about it is making people want to go see it. It has made $758 million, meaning that this film has not only passed its break-even point, but is also in the point of profitability. Now, some will argue that it actually needs to make $800 or $900 million, and again, those are based off of assumptions, less so than actual reported box office numbers. But again, at the very least, in the more conservative estimates, this film has been able to break even and make a little bit of profit as well. All the while, Clifford the Big Red Dog is Clifford the Big Red Flop, which was not much of a surprise to me or anyone else who has been following this for any length of time. So going to some charts real quick, let's look at some charts. We were able to do some predictions and projections for Ghostbusters Afterlife and King Richard, which are now in their second week of release. So because of the $115 million of Ghostbusters Afterlife, my projections are that it'll make somewhere between $165 and $231 million worldwide, which means that the film will either lose $13 million, which again is not nearly as large as some of the other films on this list, but could theoretically still be in the negative, but could make as much as $26.4 million in net gain, net profit. This is also not including things like Blu-ray and 4K sales, but since those really cannot be really followed in any real metric for a long-term period of time, we'll just go ahead and leave it at that for now. Still, it is enough to be able to put it in a position above that of the 2016 Ghostbusters because of the much smaller production budget and what they were able to do with that production budget as well. As you can see, for King Richard, the loss is going to be somewhere between $60 million and $55 million because of its paltry $16.5 million after its first 2 weeks of release. Obviously, the HBO Max number there having a major impact on that, and clearly something that needs to be taken into account. Eternals is slowing down so much that the original estimates, again, the only way that it was going to get to this positive $37 million is if the international numbers held up. They don't seem to be doing that, so this film will fall instead probably closer to between this negative $58 and negative $10 million range. So if it gets closer to this one, you could argue that it could break even after Blu-ray and 4K sales, because obviously there are people that for some reason do want to go see this movie, but it is still something that's going to still remain to be seen. Not anything that we can really say with any certainty up to this point in time. Talking about House of Gucci, as I said before, about why this is going to be another financial flop for Ridley Scott. $34.7 million so far. It's because in total it costs $112.5 million when you add in marketing cost. So again, break even point of even just $187.5 million there still makes this film likely well out of reach of that number. We'll have to wait to see that second weekend drop-off is going to be like, but not a very strong start, not looking good for that movie in the long run. And lastly, as I mentioned previously about No Time to Die at $758.1 million worldwide, it's now at $4.8 million in net gain, net positive, vastly exceeding any projections that I had for the movie and what I think a lot of people were expecting for this movie. And again, it's because of that massive $600+ million it got from the foreign market. Now, you could probably do a fuller breakdown of those numbers and make off the fact that it needed to make a lot more than that if it was going to rely that heavily on foreign numbers, where it doesn't usually make, or studios don't make as much money back on their investments as they do in domestic markets, which is true. But when you start to dive into the weeds there, it can get very messy very, very quickly, because then you have to take into account, okay, what about some tax breaks? What about some free marketing, or at least cross-promotional marketing that didn't cost them anything? And then that's when you start to kind of dive into the weeds so much that you can get lost very, very quickly. But what are your thoughts about these numbers? Are you surprised that Ghostbusters Afterlife is really, again, kind of the star of this weekend, even though Encanto, as a new release, did win the domestic opening? It is, again, not looking very good for that film, while Ghostbusters Afterlife having a 44% drop in its second week of release, even after getting a lot of people to go see it during the actual Thanksgiving frame, is quite impressive. Sony has actually been one of the more impressive of the production companies this entire pandemic period. And one of the things that I'm going to try and do towards the end of the year is do a full breakdown of who were the most successful studios of the year. The biggest losers, of course, would be Warner Brothers and Disney, but Sony, I think, is going to be definitely at the top of that list as far as having some of the more profitable films, because not only do you look to that for Ghostbusters, but then you look also to a film like Venom 2, which has made $100+ million in raw net gain, net profits, which is still quite insane to me. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, smash the rumble button, and loud that fire button. And honestly, you're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.
And now for a huge shout out to all of my November Patreon, Subscribe Star, and Locals members. Starting first off with Patreon, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator, Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dolores Ed, Dion, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob the Juice, JC, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura the Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out to my Subscribe Star members, UAB, Mad Dog, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J, Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, and J Rod, the Beer Guru, and of course, ZK Man. Thank you very much for supporting me over there. And to my 3 supporters over on locals.com, Kara Tharp, Bifford a Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video I do on the channel, check out that top link in the description below to find out how to sign up to the various levels that exist, including the most basic level where you get a shout out, the secondary level, the Army of Asgard, where you get that, plus access to a giveaways exclusive server where I give away things like 4Ks and Blu-rays and digital codes. All kinds of stuff, a lot of fun. You then also have the Keeper of the Bifrost level where you get all that stuff, plus access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. You get to ask us questions, and you get also access to that and the entire library of podcast episodes that we have done. And then there is, of course, the Chosen of Valhalla level, where not only do you get all of that, but also in your first month, you get a t-shirt of your choice and sent to you anywhere in the world. Of course, just let me know your size and the color option that you want. It'll be sent to you that first month. And also, you get to be featured on the once a month Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we have a ton of fun talking about movies and projects and all kinds of stuff. Pretty much anything that the Chosen wants to talk about is on the table. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out that top link. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.